Few things are more mysterious and intriguing than the secret bases around the world, and submarine bases are particularly fascinating because they could show up almost anywhere on the map, and their clandestine facilities could bring life and death into balance on a massive scale. Here are 10 of the most secretive locations, many now mothballed or abandoned, that give a slight glimpse as to how deep the rabbit hole really goes. Number 1. Holy Loch, Scotland. Whereas the nearby Her Majesty's Naval Base Clyde, Her Majesty's Naval Base Portsmouth, and Her Majesty's Naval Base Devonport are all among the UK's biggest and best known bases, the base at Holy Loch was intended to be much more secret, but once the British lent use of it to the Americans for Submarine Squadron 14 and anti-nuclear protests began, there wasn't much that remained secret about any of it. The Soviets clearly knew all about it anyway, and according to reports, Russian subs used to wait just outside the entrances to trail the enemy, or alternately their playmate for tag, from the moment they left base. Number 2. Suzanne Albania. The Soviets bargained with Albania to take possession of the island in exchange for canceling their debt. Located at a strategic choke point in the Adriatic Sea flowing into the Mediterranean, the small island is rumored to be covered in secret tunnels and underground facilities, including some 3,600 single-occupancy bunkers designed to withstand a nuclear attack, and reportedly a secret chemical weapons lab as well. Considered a highly militarized fortress during the height of the Cold War, it was eventually reclaimed by Albania after they cut ties with the Soviets, and today remains virtually closed off to visitors, though it's often used for military exercises. Even so, they're hoping to turn it into a tourist spot sometime in the future. Number 3. Brutana Bay and the Kuril Islands. This dotted ring of islands forms a strategic barrier against Russia's easternmost submarine activities in the Sea of Okhotsk, which is their only position for direct access into a major ocean free from ice cover. More importantly, this secret base probably comes the closest to being a real-life Bond villain lair. It was built inside a sunken caldera inside a protected harbor with a shallow entrance that leads to deeper bay waters on Samashir Island, which is host to 5 volcanoes, many of which are still active. The base was active from 1978 to the end of the Cold War and sustained as many as 3,000 people in the small village connected to it. A few people have toured the ruins of this top-secret base that was active from 1978 through the end of the Cold War, and at one point sustained up to 3,000 people. Number 4. Olavsvern near Tromsø in Norway. Tucked away in the scattered pieces of land on Norway's northern border is a secret base with fascinating and massive facilities to house and repair submarines deep inside sheltered tunnels, and along with it the resources to house and station a large force. Interestingly, this top-secret submarine base was built and paid for by NATO to defend against the communists, but in a twist of fate, in the years since the end of the Cold War, the cost of maintenance led the Norwegians to put it up for sale. And who else would choose to lease it but the Russians? Are they really gearing up for something yet again? Tensions have never been higher, and the U.S. military forces have certainly been on alert over the rapid pace and massive buildup of SSBN nuclear subs and facilities to house them, including in some cases dusting off those that already exist. Number 5. The Balaclava submarine base at Sevastopol in Crimea on the Black Sea. Like other submarine bases, this was top secret at the time, but today it's actually become an official tourist attraction, and people can take a guided tour to see the massive underground structures that once housed some of the Soviet Union's deadliest fleets. Though geography has provided many challenges to Soviet naval supremacy in other locales, after seeing photos inside this place, there's no second guessing why the Russians have long dominated the Black Sea. Number 6. Kings Bay, Georgia. With thousands and thousands of miles of coastline on 2 oceans and other bodies of water, there are no shortage of places for U.S. submarine bases. But in the latter phase of the Cold War, this unsuspecting location in Georgia became a major base of power, particularly after Spain kicked Submarine Squadron 16 out of its base at Gibraltar, and other European partners downsized their cooperation. At this point, the U.S. decided to re-up on its positions on the Atlantic Ocean at home. During President Jimmy Carter's term in the 70s, the Georgian native had billions of dollars of infrastructure moved to his home state, and today it remains home to the Trident nuclear-armed submarines and one of the most powerful and secretive Navy installations. Number 7. Yalong Bay, Hainan Island. This secret Chinese nuclear subbase in the South China Sea, among other installations, appears to be newly built, and there's little information on it, but there's no missing the telltale signs that a powerful force is housed here and could be deployed at a moment's notice to the flashpoints and tensions in the South China Sea and other places in China's domain. This location and others like it prove that China is gearing up for something, and a South China Sea conflict may at this point be inevitable. Number 8. Pavlovsk and Primorsky Krai, near Vladivostok. A couple of kids snuck into the remains of this vast, abandoned submarine pen that just starts to shed some serious light on how far things go underground. Generally near Vladivostok, Russia's biggest naval station in the east, this remote outpost was never fully completed before it was shut down with the end of the Cold War. Inside, the explorers found a network of tunnels that go on for miles, and a partial map was made of the terrain. But curiously, these urban explorers noted that they could only go so far into the tunnels, as they went on for an unknown distance, submerged underwater, where only the submarines could go. How far it really goes is entirely up for debate or speculation, but other projects in underground tunneling used for public transportation prove that underwater tunnels of almost any length are technologically feasible. And with that in mind, here's a couple threads worth mulling over, a mental exercise, if you will, to consider what the real extent of the secret infrastructure is. These U.S.-controlled places are partly documented and partly unknown, but there's reason to consider that the most secretive submarine bases of all might be inland and under the sea. Even the rumors are fascinating. Number 9. Underneath Walker Lake, Nevada. This high-salinity lake is only rumored, but it is curiously home to the Naval Undersea Warfare Center that exists next to the Hawthorne, Nevada ammo dump. Rumors claim that this unlikely naval submarine testing center actually connects to an underground tunnel to an outlet in the Pacific Ocean on California's coast. And as unlikely as this seems, militaries have indeed put underground submarine tunnels that span at least 40 to 50 miles. This Walker Lake site is approximately 200 miles from potential outlet points at Monterey Bay at Moss Landing, where there's some very distinctive underwater trenches leading up to it, or at the San Francisco Bay. Another potential outlet is some 300 miles away at Point Mugu, near the naval base at Port Huniaume, which raises even more tantalizing speculation. People have pointed to this unusual and fascinating underwater feature that some believe to be a nuclear-hardened underwater entry base, big enough for a submarine fleet, experimental vehicles, or perhaps even UFOs. And to add one more piece of the puzzle, the Navy admittedly tests submarines inland in a lake in Idaho, which is landlocked. The Navy's Acoustic Research Detachment at Bayview, Idaho, tests 1/4 scale submarines in Lake Pend Oreille, which has waters more than 1,100 feet deep. Still, it's a long way from the oceans where the submarines would best be put to use. Number 10. The proposed Embed deep-water nuclear submarine bases. As strange as it seems, there could even be submarine bases underneath the ocean, buried into the ocean floor. Who can say if it was ever constructed, but it was in fact proposed in a serious document from the 60s during the height of the Cold War era. Technical feasibility plans demonstrate how tunnel boring machines would have been able to construct under the seabed bases, where oxygen and other essentials would be only a minor consideration, and the element of surprise and secrecy would be well in hand. Of course, the Navy did test out several sea labs, but those were placed on the seabed at the bottom of the ocean, and given water pressure and everything else, they were still very dangerous, and a couple people died just in the testing phase, so they haven't ever moved forward with them, at least that we know.
Or will he, in this less than perfect world, use the underwater realm for military purposes? Will there be manned outposts on the ocean bottom, fortresses, submarine bases, supply depots?
But this is a completely different situation. The abstract describes how large undersea installations with a shirt sleeve environment have existed under the continental shelves for many decades. It says the technology now exists using off-shelf petroleum, mining, submarine, and nuclear equipment to establish permanent manned installations within the sea floor that don't have any air umbilicals or any other connection with the land or the water surface. And the proposals were serious enough that they put forward a seabed arms control treaty in 1971 that was meant to make under the sea and in seabed bases off limits, at least outside of territorial waters, for fear that they would put nuclear bases there, submarines, or what have you. Of course, the truly secret bases don't make this list because they're top secret, they're not well known, and we can only speculate and we can only wonder how far things have gone. Of course, I don't believe in any respect that treaties alone or Cold War installments would call off the kind of facilities that have been built and the defensive protections that they perceive they need just in case. If one side can break agreements and strike the other side is going to stay ready and armed just in case. And that's just the way it is. But these are fascinating facilities, and we can only wonder how many others are out there.